Welcome to an episode of Life Stories with Marty. I'm Marty here in Melbourne. So on today's, we've got a very special guest, as we always do, Kieran Beville. Kieran's an Irish poet, author, and former educator. He was also once a Baptist pastor. So we're going to cross over to Limerick and let's have a chat with Kieran. Kieran, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Marty. Pleasure.
It's an honor to have you on the show. We've heard your bio and that, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to you over the last few weeks. So I'm delighted to speak to you and have you on the show. Now we're going to go into your writing career, which is you expand quite a few years. We're going to start off, obviously, with your life story and where you grew up in Limerick in the 60s. And I want to let you flow on with it. Now, if you don't mind, if I'd like to do something is we're going to be going in to your two siblings, which you'll be bringing up, Margaret and Michael, and God rest them. And they had Down syndrome. I'd like to dedicate this episode to Margaret and Michael, if that's all right with you, Kieran.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, Marty. No problem. Now, I don't see myself fully on the screen. You can see me fine, can you?
I can see you clearly. You're all good, my friend.
Okay.
Okay, Kieran, so I'm going to kick off the question. So tell us about growing up in Limerick in the 60s and then progress on to your family, and we'll lead up to where it's bringing you to where you are today. So I'm handing the microphone. This is your life story, Kieran.
Okay, Marty. Where do I start? Well, I was born in 1957 in an area called Thomondale in Limerick. And Limerick is essentially a working class city. And so I grew up in the 60s. I was a child in the 60s. And I'm very glad to have grown up at that time. I think we had a lot of freedom. Now, I know there were other things going on in the background that kind of we didn't know much about. But we had freedom, and we played fields, and people were poor, generally. Like my family was poor, but we were never hungry. My father worked, and my mother made the best of what she had. And we used to swim in the river. The river in those days was clean enough to swim in. And in fact, my mother's family, her father and her brothers, made a living from fishing the river before Ardnacrusha was built, and kind of that changed everything in terms of fishing salmon. But yeah, I was a happy child. I spent a lot of time in the outdoors, and as I grew older, I developed a strong interest in music and art and literature. Is that okay? You want me to say any more about that?
No. Please carry on. Go into your family, please.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I was a middle child. I had three brothers and three sisters. Two sisters older than me and a brother older, and two brothers younger and a sister younger. So I was right in the center of that family. And what dominated my family really was the firstborn, Michael, was Down syndrome. And the second youngest, Margaret, was also Down syndrome. So that was a cross really for my parents. And I think my mother's faith helped her hugely. My father wasn't a religious man. My mother was a devout Catholic. But I think it was difficult in some ways. Michael was just my brother, really. And he was a great character. I could tell you some very funny stories about him. on one occasion when he was in hospital. Eventually, he's deceased now, and so is Margaret. The rest of the family were still alive. But Michael died, he was 63, almost 64, which made him the Down syndrome in Ireland. And everybody said it was tender loving care that kept him alive, and maybe it was. I think antibiotics had something to do with it as well.
That's right. Kieran, we're just having a little bit of bad reception there. If you can move closer to your computer, but you think we're just a couple of flickers here. I know I'm all the way in Melbourne. If you could just, yeah,
you can see me.
Yeah, it's right? More your voice we're looking at and your signal. Okay. That's fine.
Okay.
Excellent. Carry on, please, Kieran. My apologies.
Yeah, so Michael was a character, and in those days, in the 60s, Thomondgate was a community. We didn't lock our front doors. People would just knock on the door and step in. We were all in the same boat, really. Everyone was poor. We had nothing to steal. But you could leave Michael out on the street and the community would take care of him. I think those days are gone. But he died eventually of renal failure. But he spent a lot of time in and out of hospital in his latter days. And he was a character. On one occasion, as top surgeon, walked into the ward where Michael was a patient, and he had junior doctors, a whole trail of junior doctors following behind him like ducklings, And so he walked up to Michael's bed, and he picked up Michael's chart from the end of the bed, and he turned to the junior doctors and he started talking about Michael without saying hello to Michael or asking him anything or introducing himself. And of course, then he turned to Michael and he looked at him, and Michael said, "Boiled egg and toast, please." Because you see, Michael he had no understanding of boundaries or authority. All he saw was a person in a white coat, and he was hungry, and he thought it was breakfast time. So all the little ducklings, the junior doctors, laughed their heads off, and I think that surgeon was embarrassed in the end. I'll just tell you one more story about him. Is that okay?
Yes, please, Kieran.
Yeah. He was going deaf in his later years, and so he was to have a hearing test at the University Hospital. And the way they operated there is they have this glass cubicle, and you go into the glass cubicle, and the nurse instructed him, if you hear a low-pitched sound, put up your left hand. If you hear a high-pitched sound, put up your right hand. And my sister, Betty, he was living with her at the time, and she was a great woman, still is a great woman, Betty. She took care of Michael and Margaret, and after my parents died, they both lived with her. But anyway, Betty knew that Michael wouldn't be able to cope with these instructions at all. And he was an outrageous flirt. He loved girls, and he loved getting a kiss and a kiss. And so he sat in the cubicle, and Betty explained to the nurse, he won't be able to follow this. And the nurse, of course, said, you'd be surprised what Down syndromes can understand what they do. Michael sat in the cubicle anyway, and she started the audio test, and he put up his left hand, and then he put up his right hand, then he put up his right hand again. And so the test finished, and the nurse came to Betty, and she said, "Now, I told you, that he'd be well able to cope with it." And Betty laughed, and she said, "He was saluting the nurse as they passed by."
But isn't that, Kieran? Is that such innocence? I love that.
Michael was a character, and he was very gentle. not a bit of malice or aggression
Yeah.
in him at all. And he used to get a taxi. He worked in Bournemore. It's a sheltered workshop for people like himself with
Yeah.
disabilities. And he used to get a taxi. A different taxi driver would come to Betty's house, pick him up, drop him off, drop him home. So all the taxi drivers got to know him very well. And at his funeral, there was a whole convoy of empty taxis at his funeral, which
Oh,
was very sexy, really. You know, he was greatly loved by everyone in the community. He thought he was Elvis.
great.
He hadn't a single note in his head, but he'd pull up his collar and he'd do the movements, and he loved music. And when after he died, I wrote a story called "A Taxi for Elvis," and that was published in the local newspaper in Billimacleader and in the Christmas edition of Ireland's Own as well. And yeah, so my
Can you give
family
us a
were.
synopsis of that? Would you like to tell us that?
Well, two of the stories I just told you are included in it. The story about the surgeon and the boiled egg, ordering the boiled egg from the top
I
surgeon,
love that one. Yeah.
and and him flirting outrageously with the nurses in the audio cubicle. And the reason it's called Taxi for Elvis is I was collecting him and I didn't have my phone, and I asked the receptionist of the hospital if she could ring a taxi. And of course, they knew Michael because he was constantly going in and out of the hospital. So she picked up the phone and she said, "Taxi for Elvis." That's where we got the title, you know.
That's
So
brilliant.
uh, uh,
You obviously loved him very much, and he went to. And just to go
yeah,
back a little bit there, Kieran, is your parents were obviously very, very good people, and the stories that you tell there about Michael, I'm sure you've got some about Margaret, but it's lovely the way you talk about them. So just going back a bit, your parents, how did they go, like going through everything with all of this, and obviously bringing them up, I suppose, the word I'm looking for.
yeah. Well, what else could they do? Really, this was their family. I've heard from older cousins that my mother and father, they didn't know Michael was Down syndrome for a long time.
Mm.
It was a year and a half, maybe 2 years before they realized. And in those days, people called them Mongolians. I'd go to the shop because of the mongoloid features, the slanty eyes and so on. I'd go to the local shop, to Mrs. Rahilly's, and she'd say to me, "How are the little Mongolians?" I laugh now looking back at it, but that's what people call them.
Yeah, they
And
didn't really mean it that much.
no,
Um,
they didn't mean any harm at all, Marty. No,
no,
that's just. And she was concerned. She wanted to know how they were, and but times have changed, and we have a better understanding now of those things. Could you bear one quick little story
I
about
would,
Michael?
Kieran. Can you put your camera down a little bit, please?
Sure,
It's moved.
like this.
That's great. Yeah, not that far. Be careful now. This is
No,
a family show. There you go. Sorry, go ahead, Kieran.
okay. Anyway, yeah, you see, I can't see myself here at all, so that's why. Anyway, um, we went to, whenever I see Bourbon biscuits, the Bourbon biscuits? They're two kind of chocolate biscuits with this chocolate in the middle. You know
Oh
them?
yeah.
Yeah. You see, we never had biscuits at home. My mother baked. We had apple trees in the back garden and gooseberries and red and black currants and so on. And my mother baked apple tarts and she made all sorts of nice things to eat like that. But we never had biscuits. But my Aunt Rose, who spent a lot of time with the family, God rest her now. She would every Christmas she'd come and visit us, and she'd bring a tin of USA biscuits. See,
Yep.
and and the Bourbons were, a favorite in those. They were a mixed, and they had the Bourbon biscuits. But one summer, I was with Michael and my mother, and I don't know, she was buying some clothes for the two of us. We went to Morden's Menswear in William Street, a traditional shop that's gone now. And we visited a cousin in the city, see?
Okay.
And this was in the month of June or July now. It was summer, I remember that clearly. And she gave us tea in fine china. She was a bit posh, And she gave us tea and a plate of Bourbon biscuits. And Michael picked one up, looked at it, and he said, Christmas. So whenever I see Bourbon biscuits, I think, it's Christmas,
Your mom, your mom, Kieran, was like my mom. Yeah, we used to go down to Tipperary with Dad. You go down picking the berries and the apple trees and the bacon apples, and they would making jam. Yeah, that's the way it was back then. But I loved Michael's attitude towards it. Now, just moving on a bit, I want to go on now and talk about your life as in further as what you're doing at the moment and a writer, author, the stuff that you've done. I've read a lot of your stuff. And then I'm going to let you talk. And then I want to dovetail in and ask you a question from when you were a teacher. I'm not laughing. You know what I'm coming up with. And you were in special education. And then you became a Baptist pastor. Yes. Okay. I'm handing it over to you from here. I'll shut up for a minute.
Where do I start with that now? When I was a teenager in Limerick, I was writing poetry. Now, it was rubbish, really, but I was scribbling and learning, I was involved in organising a season of poetry readings at King John's Castle just for 1 year. And it's a great pity there wasn't enough money in the kitty to produce an anthology that particular year of the Castle poets. Previous years had produced anthologies under Claude and Dorina Byrne. But we had Desmond O'Grady, Michael Hartnett, John Liddy, Mark Whelan, myself, and others reading that particular year. We'd go over to Halpin's pub then and Kitty Breeden, and we'd have conversations, really English. They're all well-known Limerick characters. Some of them passed on now. So I went to college then. I went to UCC, and I studied, my main subjects were English and history. You take on 4 subjects and you drop 2 after your first year. So I also studied Greek and Roman civilization and philosophy. I mention those because in my writing, nothing has ever been wasted. So I went on then and I did the HDIP, the Higher Diploma in Education. That's a master's degree in education now, a postgraduate diploma. And I became a qualified secondary school teacher. And I taught in the College of Commerce in the city centre in Cork for 3 years, St. John's College as well. And then I taught English as a foreign language to business executives, 1-to-1, and that was quite intense. And I went into youth work. I worked for the YMCA on a program called Support Training and Enterprise Program. It was for 18 to 25-year-old male and females who had left school early, and it was designed to compensate them for their lack of educational attainment at second level. So I managed that program for a couple of years, and then I got a job as Youth Reach coordinator in the Glen. Now, the Glen is the roughest area in Cork City. When I moved in, it was a greenfield situation. I took over 6 apartments and put up steel shutters. This annoyed the community because I was making a statement here, and I took on 36 people, boys and girls. Again, these were 15 to 18-year-olds. The STEP program was 18 to 25, actually. Not sure if I made that clear. But these were 15 to 18-year-olds. They were all expelled from school. No school could handle them. So I had 6 teachers working for me, and some auxiliary staff, security, receptionist, secretary, and cleaners. And I managed that for 6 years. It was tough work. It was rewarding work. I remember a lot of the, maybe I shouldn't say this. No, probably shouldn't say this about some of the mothers in the area. I leave that one slide.
We'll block that one. But can I just go back a little bit? What you're saying there is like underprivileged children.
Yes.
Or teenagers working there. Mm-hmm. What was the worst and the best one you had out of it?
The worst and the best?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've had students that went on to do their leaving cert and became decent people. They were on the periphery of crime, really, and some of them graduated to prison, sadly. And I visited the prison in Cork. I knew the director of the educational program in Cork prison, so I would go there sometimes. But I had people, who died, from drug overdoses, from lives of crime, and people who went to prison, and people who sorted their lives out and got on and are married now, have children, have a trade or are working consistently, lifted themselves out of difficult circumstances. I'd like to think the program made a difference.
I was going to say, yeah, the program makes a difference, but with yourself, mental-wise, how do you do it? How do you progress as in dealing with people? And obviously you learn from it and everything you're doing, but mental health obviously affects, and as we've talked about, I've been privileged to talk to you before the show for a few hours, probably me blabbing your ear off, but that's okay, we'll keep that quiet. But how do you deal with that by letting other people know it's safe to talk?
Yeah, well, I did suffer from depression for a long number of years. I was on medication, and I did attempt suicide, and I struggled with mental health. And I suppose I was in an area of work that was difficult. It was difficult to switch off, because some of the home backgrounds for these people, they lived in very difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
They were being used and abused, and I found it difficult to cope with all of that. And eventually I got help, and I got counselling from Lucinda Scott, the head psychiatrist at University College Cork, and others, psychotherapy. So I don't have these issues now. I get sad sometimes, like everyone. I have happy times, but I don't have this. I'm not in the valley anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not under that shadow. Things are different for me now.
You've learned to deal with that or control it.
I've learned to deal with it. You see, my marriage, it affected my marriage. People think, that depression is about sadness. Well, it is. That's one aspect of it, but it's not. It's much more complex than that. Depression can cause, anxiety and distort your thinking, and it damages relationships. And eventually, my marriage broke down. Now, I had a long marriage. I was married for 39 years, and I knew my wife before we married for 3 years. So I was in that relationship for 42 years before eventually she left me. How she stuck it with me, I don't really know. But a very good woman. She comes from a decent family, and I don't have a bad word to say about her. But that's over now. That's history.
Yeah, so
I had to
also,
sell
Kieran,
my
but
house in
kind of
West
I can
Cork.
dig in a little bit is why did she leave? What were you doing wrong?
Ah, you see, I was difficult to live with, really, because of my mental health issues
Yeah.
and because of the work I was involved in. Now, you asked me earlier, and this ties into your question about me becoming a Baptist pastor. I was called to be a Baptist pastor out of, when I was 15 years old, I met a stranger on the street, and I was converted, as they say, from Catholicism. I became, the Jesus freaks. I
Yes,
was
yeah, 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 yeah,
I,
yeah.
I was one of these. And as time went by, of course, got more conservative and more religious and more churchy and all the rest of it, you see. But looking back now, I think what attracted me to it really was the camaraderie. We were all young people. We had long hair. Believe it or not, now I had long, thick, wavy, curly,
I was
brown
going to say
hair.
I could have sent you a wig for the show. Anyway, carry on, Kieran.
I wore love beads, the multicolored love
Yeah, yeah,
beads.
yeah. I like
I
them.
had an Afghan coat in the winter. I had patched Levi denim jeans, red tag, of course, Jesus sandals or moccasin boots for the winter. I was a sight to behold, and doused in patchouli oil, and so I always
You're
struggled.
carrying your own cross.
I was indeed, yeah. But I always struggled to believe, I always had doubts. And so, I was attending the Baptist church while I was working in Cork City, while I was working in and living in the city and working in the Glen on the Youth Reach program that I spoke about earlier. And I was called then to be pastor of Westside Baptist Church in Bandon. And so I took up that call and I moved to Bandon with my family. I have 3 children. My eldest boy was 12, the next boy was 9, and my daughter was 6. And we moved, it was a big move for all of us, and bought a house in Bandon. And so but it was a bad move for me, not just financially, but it was a bad move, a bad career move, not just a bad career move, but really, I became trapped in a profession that I didn't want to be in. I had doubt, and doubt developed into disbelief, and depression developed into despair, and there were attempts at suicide, and I felt trapped, and I felt I couldn't really get out of it. Now I've written a novel. It's not published yet. It will be, but it's called The Ruby Teardrop, and it's like most first novels. It's semi-autobiographical, and there's parts of me in every character in that book, and it's drawn from experience, and it's about a minister who feels trapped in his profession, and he commits suicide, and it's really about the heroine, his wife, and her coping with all of that, and the nature of their relationship. So I hope that answers your question. I did feel trapped. I felt I didn't belong, and I struggled to get out. I was in my 40s, and I thought, who's going to take me now? It was difficult enough to get a job in Ireland. And when the marriage eventually broke down in 2017, my ex-wife, she left on the 30th of December, 2017, and I preached my last sermon on the 31st of December, the following day after she left, and I never went back, and that's it. I moved back to Limerick from Cork, which was the best thing I ever did. I have some great friends, and I fitted in, and I started writing poetry now in earnest. I started exploring themes of love and loss. I might have overdone it, and I wrote poetry, confessional poetry, and it was a therapeutic journey for me. I learned a lot about myself, and I became established really as a poet. I have 6 volumes of poetry at the moment with Revival Press. I have another volume coming out later in the year with Yellow House Publishing, a British publisher. That's it, Marty.
Just going, Kieran, what you said there is like expressing yourself in poetry or that. Is the fact that you're able to do that and express it out, I think is admirable. I'm in awe of your poetry, and I've read some of it and stuff coming up. So I just want to move on and tell me a little bit, well, going back a little bit, but tell me about the stuff you've done with your that in overseas, and your concern with humanity and how things are operating at the moment. I mean, I'm not political, neither are you, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. So tell me a little bit about that, please, Kieran.
Yeah, sure. I studied theology in Wales for 4 years. We're going back and forth from Ireland while I was a pastor. There were 2 kind of residential modules each year, and the rest was done by correspondence. And so I studied for 4 years, and as I say, I became a Baptist pastor, and I was invited to go on a trip to Eastern Europe by the Slavic Gospel Association. I had actually left in 2004. I left the Baptist ministry, and I took on a job with the Slavic Gospel Association in Eastern Europe, leadership training Baptists, training pastors and church planters. So I went to Serbia, Hungary, Romania, Macedonia, Moldova. I've been out to those countries several times. I went teaching to India in a Bible college there. First time I went for 6 weeks. I went back, I spoke at a conference to 1,500 professors. The scale of things in India is huge. I thought there might be 50 principles. These are the principles of the college. I thought there might be 50. There was 1,500. There's over 60 million Christians in India. And I've been there, been to Assam, Nagaland, Delhi. I spoke at a mission conference in New Delhi. So I've been out there several times. So, and I worked in Jordan, teaching in the Jordan Evangelical Theological Seminary there. What did you ask me now? What did you want to know? Yes, my travels. But I've just completed a manuscript, Marty. A lot of articles called "Bearing Witness."
Hey, Kieran, if you can keep your mouth near the microphone, just you're breaking a little. I know we're Australia to Ireland, but okay. I can hear. Yeah, if you can just keep a bit closer. You look gorgeous. Don't worry about that. Yeah, I want your voice.
Yeah. Anyway, what did you ask me now? You want me to talk about what?
If you go into, if you want to follow up a bit with
Oh, yes.
like your writing and everything, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes, I remember now. So I've just completed this manuscript and I sent it off, and we'll see what happens with it. It's called Bearing Witness Gaza Beyond the Headlines. And really, I mean, apart from tracing the historical roots of the problem, from the Balfour Declaration to the Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948. I just, like everyone else, I think we're horrified at what's happening in Gaza at the moment, and I'm just shocked that I have to say now America's complicity and Europe's silence and the kind of evangelical alliance with Israel, and so I've written a whole series of articles. I can't remember, it must be about 40 articles altogether from a range of different perspectives on this issue. And I started off writing one, silence then and now. What does the whole Gaza thing tell us about ourselves, really?
Mm.
And then it evolved into this. So I have that manuscript. I have a manuscript. I have three unpublished manuscripts at the moment.
Mm.
The other one I spoke about already, the Ruby Teardrop. That's a novel, and then there's a book that I call Image and Echo, and it's a book. I chose 21 iconic paintings, that everyone in the world would know really, and I wrote an article on each one.
Oh,
And I wrote some poetry, on each one as well. And I wrote the poetry in sonnets, Shakespearean sonnets. Although for the Mona Lisa, I did a Petrarchan sonnet because that's Italian and better and more appropriate. And in blank verse. And I got very fond of blank verse, really. Blank verse is written in iambic pentameter. It's 10 syllables per line, stressed on stress, stressed on stress, stressed on stress, stressed on stress, 5 times like that each line. But it doesn't end. It doesn't have end rhyme, so it doesn't sound so corny, you know. So that's Image and Echo. I'm looking for publishers for these works, and I have 23 other books. When I was about this
I
past,
was just going to bring that up there. Yes.
I wrote, I think it's 16 books of a religious and academic nature. I have one with Cambridge Scholars Press. I have one on hermeneutics, the principles of sacred and secular textual interpretation. Some are faith-based. I have a daily devotional. Some are hefty volumes I wrote on social issues like euthanasia and assisted suicide. Um, so I wrote expository commentaries on books like Ezra, an Old Testament book, one on the fruit of the Spirit called Cultivating Christian Character. But I'm no longer a believer, Marty. I want to make that crystal clear in
Yeah.
this. I left the evangelical community in 2017, and I have no intention of being drawn back in there because even before I left, I really felt uncomfortable. I didn't share that worldview, really. I didn't, the values and worldview are not mine, and they sat uncomfortably with me. So I'm not sorry I left.
Well, Kieran, I think all I can say is we're just running out of time here now. But I'm saying is that you're your own man, as in you don't need to be a religion. I don't judge any religion or whatever. You can be anything you want. even a priest, but you can
There's a story.
people be wondering what the hell are they talking about.
It could be interviewed who now.
But Kieran, I've got to know you're absolutely lovely man. And I know we'll stay in touch. I've made a friend in a few weeks, and you've got a lot to offer, especially the way you talk about I love the stories you talk about Michael and Margaret with Down syndrome. That's going to bring a lot of smiles on people's faces that are living within the same. And I know we've had a couple of interruptions with your video, but we've got your sound. So anyone that's watching, there might be a couple of interruptions. But can I just ask you one thing before we just finish? Kieran, everything have been true. What advice would you give to young people that are looking at writing or even just general in mental health through life? And we'll finish up after you take your time, whatever you would like to speak out to people here in Australia and all over the world. What advice would you give?
Well, I wouldn't be one for giving anyone advice now, really. I don't think I'm the right person to do that. But for me, if I can answer it this way, I think it's important to be authentic, to be who you are, not to pretend to be something else in order to fit in, and just to live an authentic life. I mean, if I had my life again, I'd live it very differently. I worry about people who say they wouldn't, that they'd live it the very same. I think maybe they haven't reflected very well on their lives or haven't been honest about their lives. I have lots of regrets, but you can't change the past. About writing, what advice would I give? I would just say keep going. Don't expect everything you write to be important or good. It won't be. You'll have to discard an awful lot of it. And it's in the rewriting that you'll find quality. And but just to keep going, I'm a prolific writer. I wouldn't say everything I've written is good or important, but it's been a journey, and that journey is important. It was for me a journey of discovery, kind of exploring the great interior of the heart and mind, and that was some odyssey, I'd have to say. I learned a lot about myself. I'm not too sure I have pearls of wisdom to pass on. I suppose when you get to a certain age, you've learned something. You should have learned something when you get to a certain age. I suppose one of the greatest regrets I have is that, when you come out of the mental health difficulties, when you come out of those struggles, you see things clear, and you're no longer the person that you used to be. And sometimes it's hard to kind of live with who you were, the memory of who you were, and the wrong things that you did and said. But, we evolve, we progress, we move on, we're always becoming who we were meant to be. Right?
Well, I think I like your words, Kieran, that you said to me, we talked on emails, but personal transformation. And as we're just talking now, I'm just flashing up 6 pictures here of you, and you can see by telling you of your face and your expressions how you change in life. And look at you now. You're an inspiration for so many people. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks for having me. And lovely to meet you. And I hope we'll meet in person someday.
I know. Well, you won't get rid of it, but we'll love it. And I do enjoy the conversation we've had. My listeners are going to be very jealous because I've spent more hours. I wish I could have I couldn't fit in your whole life story. We'd need 10 episodes. But Kieran, can I just say to you, thank you so much, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
The honor is all mine, Marty, and the pleasure as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you to our listeners here in Australia and all over the world. And join us for another episode. But you can watch Kieran's episode and a lot more on Moral Injury International, and just follow the links to live stories and to our YouTube channel. Kieran, good night, my friend, and thank you very much.
All the best, Marty. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Cheerio, Kieran.
Bye.